It's a new day, a new direction for the St. Louis Rams. That's what you found out in 2012. I really liked the hiring of Jeff Fisher by the Rams organization because there were many years in Tennessee where I thought he got the absolute most out of whatever he had. One of the very best football coaches in certain aspects in all of the NFL. And when you look at this 2012 Rams team, I thought they had a very, very good draft. I was a fan of it back in April, and I'm an even bigger fan of it now. I thought they played the draft game very well, set themselves up well, not only for 2012, but in the future and beyond with how they played the draft game by not only finding some nice core pieces in that draft, but adding first-round picks in 2013 and 2014 with their trade with the Washington Redskins. But this was still, at times, a team that you could clearly tell that was playing above itself because they just weren't that good. But they did go 7-8-1. Yeah, got to throw the tie in there. Finished third in the NFC West. And because of the way they played the draft game, they have 2 first-round picks this year. They have the 16th overall selection, which is their own, and the 22nd overall pick, which comes from the Washington Redskins. As far as the offensive and defensive side of the football, I'll start with the offensive side. I'm not a big Sam Bradford fan. I'm still not. I'm still not sold on this guy. Would I rather have him than Jay Cutler? Maybe, but what is that really saying? Bradford threw for over 3,700 yards this past season, but to me at times, he still lacked that impressive quality of a guy that you really look at and say, God, that's a franchise quarterback. That's a guy that's going to lead this team somewhere. Because at times I thought he was very inconsistent. Now, it wasn't helped because, especially once Amendola went down, you found out that St. Louis just didn't have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the football for him to throw to. So it didn't really help by any stretch of the imagination. Bradford, in some ways, is a semi-victim of his environment. They need to do a better job of surrounding him with pieces. And some people may say, well, they still like the potential of a Brian Quick and Chris Givens, their 4th-round pick, look good at times, and that is very true. But that's potential. And potential can either make you or it can break you. A positive, though, they got another 1,000-yard season out of Steven Jackson, maybe his last one. What a shame for Steven Jackson, too. A guy who has been a centerpiece of that team for several years, hasn't really played on anything other than primarily bad Rams teams in large part. I feel very bad for him. A guy that if he played on a better team, had a better supporting cast, would be going into Canton someday. But I don't know if he's ever going to get there. And that's a shame because his talents merited that he probably should have. But overall, this offense really just, to me, lacks playmakers above all else. And some of the offensive numbers really pair that out. 23rd in total points, or 25th in total points, and 23rd in total yards. This is a team at times that definitely struggled to move the football, and in particular, struggled to score touchdowns when they got into the red zone. Now, defensively, this is a team with a nice young core. I like a lot of the pieces they have in place. They have a ways to go still, as their defense was still kind of middle of the pack statistically and middle of the pack in general, but there's potential there. There's huge upside there. You've got guys like Chris Long and Robert Quinn at the ends. You've got Michael Brockers at defensive tackle. You've got Janoris Jenkins. I think they'll get more next year out of Trumaine Johnson. Obviously, James Laurinaitis to me is the heart and the soul of that defense at the middle linebacker position. There is a lot to like. This Rams defense under Jeff Fisher in 2013, 2014, 2015 could be really damn good and scary. Easily a top 10, if not top 5 in the NFL defensive unit. And one of the strengths of this unit for the Rams is their ability to generate a pass rush. They tied for 1st in the league in sacks. They created a lot of pressure. They got to the opposing quarterback a lot. And that can cover for other deficiencies in other areas throughout your defense, especially in your secondary. There's a lot to like if you're a Rams fan right now. And a large part of that is due to some of the young core players that you have on the defensive side of the football. When you look at the draft history of the Rams over the past 5 years, there are some good picks, and there are honestly some very, very bad picks. Jason Smith, they took him 2nd overall, 4 years ago in 2009, was it? Jason Smith, the offensive tackle from Baylor. He sucked. What a bust. You wonder why Spagnuolo ultimately didn't work out as a head coach. Is because of dumb-ass draft decisions like taking Jason Smith number 2 overall. Horrible. Horrible. But, finding guys over the years like James Laurinaitis in the 2nd round, that was good. Drafting guys like Chris Long and Robert Quinn have worked out very nicely. And in particular, you look at this 2012 draft that they just had this past year. It was not only very good, but it could have a potential to be the draft that built a potential Super Bowl champion. And I'm dead fucking serious when I say that. It's really a wild card right now. When you look at the players that they drafted, guys like Brockers and Jenkins and Johnson and Givens and Zerline and even their 7th round pick, the second to last pick in the draft, Daryl Richardson. All of these guys contributed, are going to be, in my opinion, big contributors down the road. And that's not even throwing in their 2nd round picks like Brian Quick and Isaiah Peed. If they get anything out of one or both of those guys, this draft class becomes that much better. The 2012 draft class alone is the type of draft class that you potentially see be the starting point for having a championship team. And when you look at the fact that they've got an extra 1st round pick in the 13 draft, and in next year's draft, the 2014 one as well, because of their trading down with Washington so they could take RG3, that's that one draft that not only has short-term but long-term impact, both in terms of the roster and because it puts them in a beneficial position in terms of the draft. And if the Rams really play the game right and they really play the draft game right, you could be looking at something special potentially going on in St. Louis in a couple of seasons, and I really mean that. But with all of those other things being brought into account, make no mistake about it, the only way that this team is going to eventually get to that point of becoming a Super Bowl contender is if Sam Bradford can establish himself as the real deal and as an NFL franchise quarterback. That's it. He is the most important pick out of all of them. It is the most important thing. It might sound like a corny, repetitive refrain, but you know why it's a corny, repetitive refrain? Because it's true. If you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, you're not going anywhere. And that's the bottom line. The Rams could do a phenomenal job in this upcoming draft and next year's upcoming draft. But if Bradford continues to be an inconsistent quarterback and doesn't take that next step of progression, there'll be a team that wins 10, 11 games but gets bumped out in the wild card round or the divisional round and isn't a team you look at as a real Super Bowl threat because they're not getting enough out of their starting quarterback. And that, to me, will be the ultimate indicator of either success or failure for Jeff Fisher and the Rams over the next couple of seasons, will be the progression or maybe the lack of progression and development out of their former number 1 overall selection, Sam Bradford. Now, when I look at this upcoming NFL draft and I look at what I feel the Rams draft philosophy should be, and I've seen several mock drafts and this and that, and there seems to be a lot of focus on the defensive side of the football, some people focusing on the offensive side of the football. Now, defensively, there are still needs. They could use a little help in the linebacking core. They could definitely use some help at safety. Maybe, it never hurts to have another pass rusher on the outside or, get somebody else to play alongside Brockers in the middle of that defense. So you could argue there are needs there, but I think they are more luxury needs, and they should take a back seat to the offensive side of the football, if possible. Because ultimately, like I said, the Rams, you could say all of this and all of that, but their success will ultimately hinge as an organization on Sam Bradford's development and improvement and him establishing himself as a legit franchise NFL quarterback. And the best and most effective way to make sure that you've given him every possible chance to succeed and establish that he is that is to protect him and surround him with as much help and as many weapons as possible on the offensive side of the football. Now, the Rams have 2 first-round picks, as I mentioned. They have picks 16 and picks 22. Could be one of those things where they just play the board and take best player available, and they end up with an offensive player and a defensive player, or 2 offensive players to 2 defensive players. It would be hard to argue with that approach. I would be a very big fan of the Rams from their standpoint, really trying to set themselves up well down the road. If you got one of these teams in the early second round that wants to trade up desperately into the first round to get one of the quarterbacks, could you peel off and maybe trade this 22nd pick to a team for a first rounder next year, giving yourself 3 first rounders in 2014? That may be the way to go, in my opinion. And you still have that 16th overall pick. Now you've got 3 first-round picks in 2014. And if you get into 2013 and you've surrounded Sam Bradford with some weapons and you don't really see any improvement, maybe it's time for you to move on because he's not going to be the guy to help you take that next step. Now you've got 3 first-round picks where you could take a quarterback next year in a quarterback class is probably going to be a little bit better with one of them and surround him with some talent with those other two. Or if you need to package two of them up and move up in the board to get your quarterback, and then you could still surround him with some other weapons, that's what you could do. Like I said, the St. Louis Rams are in a tremendously good position right now. If I'm a fan of the Rams, I'm incredibly excited about the future. If I'm that Rams organization, I feel like I'm in a very powerful position right now. Now, if they just stay put and play it safe with this draft, which I don't necessarily fully agree with, but I could understand, and they stay at 16 and 22, some of the guys you could potentially see them take at maybe 16 would be guys like a Cordero Patterson if he's there, a Keenan Allen. You could see them potentially take a Chance Warmack if he was there. In fact, I think if Chance Warmack was there, he would be the guy. You could see them maybe take a safety like Vaccaro. They could sit there and take one of the defensive tackles, and have yourself a really nice 1-2 combo in there with Brockers, whether that be Sheldon Richardson or Jesse Williams, or give them a real beast of a man like John Jenkins. A Kawan Short from Purdue would be another guy that would definitely fit in there. A Sharif Floyd from Florida. There's a lot of options for them, I think, at pick number 16. Pick number 22 is where it could get a little more interesting. You could have receivers like DeAndre Hopkins or Terrence Williams from Baylor on the board. You could have one or both of the tight ends. I think tight end's a huge need on that offense. Guys like Zach Ertz or Tyler Eifert could be the guy. They could address guard there and take Jonathan Cooper at pick 22. A lot of possibilities and potential in terms of what they could do. In the second round, you could turn around, get some more weapons on the offensive side of the football. Robert Woods or Jordan Reed, the tight end. You could address safety there. Eric Reed or Matt Elam if either one of them's on the board. You could think you need to upgrade your talent on the offensive line. Dallas Thomas. You could look at wide receiver, get a guy like Quentin Patton, or say we need an upgrade for a slot receiver and draft Stedman Bailey out of West Virginia. Again, a lot of possibilities here for the Rams. It's going to be critically important that whatever decision they choose to make in terms of their approach, that they stick with it and they execute well upon it, because we could be looking at a team that by 2014, 2015, everything goes right, they're going to be one of the teams to beat, not just in the NFC, but in all of the NFL.